Dragon's Dogma is a pretty interesting title, and while it kind of flew under my radar for the better half of its existence, I do remember playing it every now and then at friends' houses. And honestly, after revisiting it and actually being able to sit down and play it, I am kind of sad that I missed this title when it was big. And even with all of the Skyrim-esque scenery and the pretty terrible acting, it still kept me invested quite a bit of the way. Dragon's Dogma is a classic. I don't really know how else to say it. But there are also quite a few good things and quite a few bad things that I thought I might go over while we're right on the cusp of Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out. First things first, the voice acting is pretty rough. There are a lot of very repeated lines that you hear, like, "The masterworks all," just things like that being replayed over and over and over, even between switching menus, and it sometimes, especially when you need to do a lot of things in your inventory, it drives you insane. That being said, you're not going to be spending a majority of your time in these places unless you change your classes a lot, which I didn't really. I only changed it about 3 or 4 times throughout my entire 30-hour playthrough. I do have to admit that there are some moments of the game that feel a little bit slapped together, especially the beginning. A lot of it feels like it's just kind of pieces that are supposed to be set up to build the tutorial. Don't get me wrong, introduction with the dragon is outstanding. I actually really like its introduction and the way that it sets up the story. But after that, it can get a little weird. Another thing that you definitely will come across as you play more of the game is the enemies in this game, especially at the beginning, are unforgiving as all hell. You will be destroyed, so expect to die and have to replay things. But again, I imagine if you're playing on easy, it's a little easier. I played on normal, especially trying to get to the Witchwood at a low level. That was hell. Not only that, but there are a lot of items and mechanics that just aren't explained very well. This is one thing I imagine they're going to completely change in the new one, but there were just some times when I was confused about what was supposed to be happening. Like, I would pick up scrolls and I read through them, but I thought that they were just like lore things, so I sold them, not realizing that you could use them and teach your pawns how to defeat certain enemies better. Some quests I also had quite an issue with. There is one quest specifically where you have to tell a family that they're being evicted from their homes, and if you don't go throughout the right times of day, sometimes the NPCs just won't be there. And that really confused me because I spent like an hour researching what I was supposed to do, and a lot of the time it was just, yeah, wait in town and wait for the NPC to come back. Which I kind of like. I like the idea that the NPCs have more to do outside of just being there for the player, but also it is quite an inconvenience when a majority of the missions that you have revolve around these characters that sometimes just might not exist in the world properly. And the last thing is, the AI is pretty dumb. A lot of the time you'll have your pawns just kind of running around not doing a whole lot, or something I saw a lot where your pawns would just kind of be fighting something and then they would back into a corner, or they would group together and just not attack for the longest time until they got downed, and then I would have to go over and resurrect them, where they would just continue doing not a whole lot. And I get that that was mostly a limitation of the time, and this is something that is, I imagine, much better in the new game, but it is something that you might want to take into consideration, especially in the early game where you will be relying on your pawns quite a bit. But now that we've gotten past that, I wanted to talk about the things that I found outstanding with this game. First off, I know that this game was nowhere near what they thought was complete, but the world building and the amount of stuff in this game is amazing for the time. While I would usually compare it to something like Skyrim, I just don't feel like that's right, because Skyrim has a lot of open time where you're just kind of walking through vistas and not doing a whole lot, where Dragon's Dogma, continuously you are running across things that are making the world more interesting, like finding a group of soldiers around a dead cockatrice, or seeing griffins flying around in the sky and just having a very threatening presence. It's all very fascinating, and it really pulled me into the world, and I was enthralled by the entire thing. The combat also feels so good. The mixture of Witcher and Shadow of the Colossus type mechanics is just so interesting, and I really appreciate the fact that this game has a magic system that doesn't revolve around the use of mana like you would see with a lot of other things. There's a little blue bar that you have just underneath your health bar that drains every time you use a spell. Instead, it revolves around time, so the more aggressive a spell or the more damage that it does, the longer it takes to cast and the more stamina it uses. And talking about spells, I thought the class system was very interesting. While I don't dislike it, I think that it has quite a few quirks that will definitely be worked out, but overall, it was really, really interesting. I do wish that a lot of the spells were more useful. Like, a lot of the Mystic Archer class just had a lot of spells that didn't do a whole lot, and there were also a lot of spells that even when I was using, they just didn't feel like they justified a slot on my character. I also thought the pawn system was very well thought out. A lot of the stuff to do with it, like connecting online and seeing your friends and different people's pawns that are like they actually built, was really, really cool, and a really nice way to interact with a lot of the community, I think. Also, being able to gift things to the owner of the pawn was quite interesting, and being able to rate them, I thought that was really cool as well. And I think the most important thing to do with this game is that this game was so incredibly ahead of its time. When it came out, we had Skyrim and things like that, but I don't know, it's crazy to me that this game didn't have the success that it should have, because there's so much to this game and there's so much promise to this game that it feels wrong to have it be forgotten like this. But gladly, I'm actually really surprised that it's getting a sequel. Not only because the community is incredibly dedicated to this game, which I 100% understand, but honestly, rightfully so. This game deserves to be completed, and that's the main thing. When Capcom released Dragon's Dogma, it was incomplete. Every single developer you hear talk about it has said that. Even a lot of the stuff inside of it feels incomplete. So that's why I'm very excited to see what Dragon's Dogma 2 does with all of the original material in what the original developers imagined this game could be. Because already, as just a basic concept, it is fantastic. Anyway, I know this was kind of a short video. I just kind of wanted to get this out there before I start playing Dragon's Dogma on launch, but thank you all so much for watching. Keep an eye out for more of these in the future, and I'll catch you in the next one. 2 days left, I can't wait.